So Jonathan Glazer, he's not made a movie in a decade, which is kind of crazy. The last movie he made was Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson.
Mm-hmm.
Really good science fiction movie, underrated movie that people should
Yeah,
check out
and
if they have
weird.
not seen it. It's super
Yeah.
weird, super crazy.
Yeah.
But now he's coming back. He's done a few short films. He's making a lot of commercials as well. He's always working, but in terms of feature films, he hasn't made something in quite a while. But The Zone of Interest has sort of hit everybody like a freight train in terms of people that are really tapped into the critical darlings of 2023, and of course the Academy Awards, which it is nominated for a pair of Academy Awards. And this is based off of a novel. This film is based off of a novel that came out about a decade ago, which is examining a German Nazi commandant and his life and this dream life that he's attempting to build with his wife, and the fact that they live in very close proximity. I mean, literally right next door to a concentration camp, and just not any concentration camp. It's Auschwitz itself, which is historically
The
kind of the most infamous and notorious concentration camp
Mhm.
that actually existed during Nazi Germany. And so this is just kind of examining this life that they're building for themselves while he's a German Nazi commandant, also sitting next to, one of the most horrific atrocities, humankind has ever endured. And so with all of that out the way, man, I'll pass it over to you. What did you think about this new film, The Zone of Interest?
Evil. That's what I think when I watch this movie now. Like that that meme of Mermaid Man saying evil, because that's really what this movie is trying to do and trying to say. It's almost impossible to spoil this film because, to be honest, not a lot happens. I don't think this movie will be for everybody, but I think the concept and what Jonathan Glazer is doing here is kind of phenomenal for me, at least in my time watching it. And so this film, man, you already said it. This family, they literally share a wall with the Auschwitz concentration camp because the commandant lives next door, and it's literally just that. It's just about this family living a normal everyday life. Like they don't do anything. Like there's a dog. There's a boat. You know what I'm saying? They live next to a creek. The kids are playing all over the place. They do like have a maid, but they eat good. There's a garden. There's all of these things that exist in their life. But in a lot of ways, this film is a horror film. And I know it sounds crazy, but as all this is going on, as this family is living their life, all you can hear in the background are screams and loud noises and people yelling, kind of. And you know that Auschwitz is next door without the film ever really touching it. This film has a lot of restraint. It has a ton of restraint to never step foot in that camp, but you feel it the entire time, and it's haunting. And it took me a second while watching it to figure out what was happening, because it is, again, nothing. It's a very slow movie. This isn't a plot. There's no character that you're supposed to follow their development. There is something in it. I'm not going to spoil that. I guess there's one small thing you can spoil. There is a family change that happens but overall, that's it. The camera placement is always in a corner of a room, and you're made to watch the family in their natural habitat, and them just exist in what they feel would be happiness, or what they would call happiness, and just living their life. And yeah, man, it's a very daunting movie, and it really is speaking to what in changing, I think, the concept of what evil looks like for you, what evil looks like in that moment, because at the end of the day, you are watching Nazis. Like you're not, you know what I mean? Like you're not necessarily supposed to root for these people at all, but also they're not doing anything. They're eating and talking at dinner time and all of these normal things that people do. And so I found myself really enjoying this film by the end of it. Not necessarily in the way of like, oh, I need to go rewatch this right now, because it's not that, but the concept and the things and I think the conversation that this film is trying to have, I think, is kind of brilliant in a couple of different ways. So man, I really like it, man. So shout out to the sound design. And one other thing I want to point out in the movie is there's not a lot of score in the movie. There's two big moments for me. It's the beginning. It opens with like a black screen and music, and the ending, which I think is similar. I think is also like a black screen and music, but the music kind of tells you everything that you need to know, and that sound kind of tells you everything that you need to know. So yeah, man, I it's a very interesting movie. I think I will revisit it one more time. I know it sounds crazy, just to make sure I have my concept and I feel the way I do about it. But I again found myself by the end of it having a conversation with myself and kind of learning that I really enjoyed this film, man. So yeah, that's it for the Zone of Interest for me.
So the zone of interest. This is it's a challenging film to talk about just due to the sensitive nature of it. Obviously, we're dealing with a real historical event, real people, real lives that were lost. But also, the main character of the movie, Rudolf Haas, was actually a German Nazi commandant. This is a real person that the book was based off of, and now the movie is also based off. And he's one of the most infamous Nazi commandants because he is the one that essentially invented the idea of the final solution, which accelerated the extermination of Jews. And so this is a very powerful and prominent figure in
Hmm.
Nazi Germany. This is a guy who accelerated his own career extremely fast and was promoted time and time again because of his success in essentially mass genocide of Jewish people, which is just horrific to think about. But he's then rewarded for that work with a lavish, beautiful house next to, again, one of the most horrific places that's ever existed on this planet, with the Auschwitz concentration camp. And the entire set design and sound design of this movie and how they frame every single shot, it's really brilliant because, as you mentioned, there isn't a ton happening. This is really just an observation movie. This movie could honestly exist inside of a museum. Like, if you go to a
Hmm.
museum and you were to
Yeah.
go through what a German Nazi commandant's quarters would look like, this is something that they can play in the background. It's just a way to observe their life, and the fact that this was all extremely normal to them. They're living their everyday lives, and the fact that we have people by the thousands being murdered and exterminated is just extremely horrific. But the mundanity of evil is a constant theme throughout this movie, and we've seen it in a lot of recent films lately. I talked about that also with Killers of the Flower Moon, how
Mm-hmm.
how
Hmm.
evil can just be normalized and how it just exists, and it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be loud and overbearing and mustache twirling. This is just everyday life for them. They don't even think about it because they have this lavish, luxurious lifestyle. Particularly Sandra Hüller's character, who's the wife of Rudolph, and the fact that she wants to maintain this lifestyle. She's not willing to sacrifice it for anything because she's helped build this for their family. And one of the most impactful scenes, I think, of the entire movie for me is her giving a tour of the entire property to one of her friends. And she's just walking, she's showing the garden, she's showing the backyard. She's just
Hmm.
so proud of everything that they've been able to build over their life. And in the background, you hear those screams, or you see a big cloud of billowing smoke, and what that insinuates. Or even when they go to sleep at night, there's red glares that come out of a window. You just know that people are being set on fire literally next
Hmm.
door, and it's such a matter-of-fact way to just go about showcasing how this is all just so normal for that particular time. And so it truly is a haunting movie, and it's a troubling movie, and it leaves you thinking about everything you just witnessed. I think for me, one thing that I really thought about a lot after watching it is the fact that, do I want to revisit this movie 10 more times? Absolutely not. And
No.
I think one thing that I really sort of took away from it, because really essentially nothing happens. It's an
Hmm.
observation piece. I wonder if this could have been a short film. I wonder if this could have been more successful as something
Mm.
that was 35 minutes long, 42 minutes long, as opposed to a feature length film. It's already not that long. It's about an hour, 40 minutes. So it ends about exactly at the point it needs to. Because if it
Hmm.
was any longer, I would get kind of sick to my stomach. But I do wonder if this could have just been something shorter, to still get across the point. Because I think about 15 to 20 minutes in, you really understand and understand like what's happening there. And they underscored a couple of times with some really, really harrowing scenes as well. And there was also like a perspective in the movie that didn't really work for me because I didn't completely understand what was happening. I
Hmm.
think apparently from the Jewish side of things, there's like some night vision, sort of sequences that happen that kind of took me out of the experience a couple of times. But be that as it may, this is definitely something that I think is really kind of a masterclass in showcasing what evil can truly look like, especially for such horrific events that actually happened, and as a
Yeah.
way to teach us that because this happened, this can always happen again. We see the atrocities even in our own society today that happen. This is not something that's completely far removed from historical context in society. Like, this was only like 80 years ago, 70 something years ago. That's pretty recent when you think about it. And we obviously know that there are still neo Nazis around the world today that still follow in these footsteps. And so it's really horrific to think about that, evil on this type of scale and level existed and that they dealt with it just
Hmm.
so matter of factly. But that's really kind of the point of the movie. So I think it's a powerful movie. It's an important film to see, but something you should definitely walk into knowing what you're kind of getting into, because it's tough. It's tough to sit through, but important in that way. But folks, I think that kind of can kind of wrap up the conversation there. Those are all of our thoughts on the brand new film from Jonathan Glazer, The Zone of Interest. If you've seen it, hit us up and let us know what you think.